Good morning, my bows and bow ties. It's 6:45 a.m. because this is when I have time. All right, stay tuned. I got some things to say. I want to talk about healthy female friendships. Okay, so welcome. I know I sound a little crazy. Of course, I've got text messages come in. You know what? People just have a knack for texting me when I'm live, even at 6:40 something in the morning. Anyway, I just want to welcome my bows and bow ties. I know I sound a little crazy. I haven't had my coffee yet. I'm dressed in all black. I was going to experiment with some lighting here, but then look what happens. You can't really see me. So, but I thought about doing this where I only my face was present. It would be like a floating face. Maybe I'll do that. So anyway, I want to talk about these friendships. So I had a conversation on Friday with someone. I don't know if I would say we're like friends per se, but we have a loose relationship. But we had a really interesting conversation and we were talking about friends. And it had me thinking about my friendships. And I was thinking about over the last year or so, not even just a year, I've had to readjust, you know, who was in my life, who was in my circle. Okay. And unfortunately, I had to look at the people who looked like me. Oh, yes. Yes. So let me just get right on into it. I want to talk about the first thing. Let me put my banners up. First of all, these are just my opinions. All statements are alleged, even if they're true or not true, whatever, but everything's alleged. All right. Let me see. The first thing I want to talk about, I have white friends. Now, normally that's not really a big deal. Okay. But when I think about what's going on in our nation and this whole racial reckoning post George Floyd and everything like that, there's been a lot of division. Everyone's been looking at each other sideways. Everybody's been looking at each other's political affiliation. There's a lot that's been going on. But the interesting thing was that wasn't the thing that I used for determining my friendships, who was in my circle. I was looking at who genuinely cared about me and who showed a level of vulnerability around me, and vice versa for me to them. The interesting thing was, this is going to sound really messed up. When I had time to be much more introspective about who I am and what I want, it dawned on me many of my friendships with people who don't look like me were better quality friendships. Now, I know for some people, this is going to be like, what? You don't say. It's going to be like gasp worthy. But they were better friends. I found that the complexion of our conversations were different. I found that the ones that were in my space were willing to have hard conversations. They were uncomfortable conversations, but they were willing to go there. Um, I'm not saying we agreed on everything, but what I also found was there was still that commonality of being a woman, of being a mother, of being in middle age. And in those moments, I don't think anybody cared about my skin. I know I wasn't thinking about theirs. Like in those moments, it was just friendship. And it hit me, most of my friendships with people who look like me were very superficial. They weren't real. They actually were quite harmful. And people have been warning me about these friendships. But when you start doing house cleaning, you start being introspective and looking around, you're like, holy cow. The interesting thing about my white friendships in recent times was they snuck up on me. I actually was talking to a friend of mine this past weekend. And I said, I remember when we first met, I wasn't the most open because it's hard to meet friends when, in your 30s and 40s. I wasn't open. I wasn't mean, but I wasn't warm. Okay. And she's like, yeah, I know. I was like, I was the one who was very like, eh. I wasn't mean. I just wasn't anything. But the interesting thing was over time, we just built that relationship over time. And I made her laugh because I was like, wait a second, how did this happen? How did this happen? How did we become friends? Now, I've had white friends in the past. It's not the fact that, like, oh my goodness, she's white, but I am cognizant of where we are today, in this nation, in our society. And everything about what's going on in our nation right now highlights all of our differences. But when I think about my relationships with my white counterparts, the ones who I talk to on a regular basis, I don't know. It was just like people don't, sometimes people just want to just be in a very real space. Like sometimes it's kind of like, look, I get it. Like there's a lot going on. But I found that if I needed somebody or I wanted to talk to somebody, it hit me. I did not go to my black friends. I went to my white friends. I'm like, when did this happen? Messed me up. Because, I always thought like, I got my sister girlfriends, right? Sister girlfriends. But the ones who were there when I needed something or I needed someone, something, a confidant, they didn't look like me. It was it was like a gut punch. I'm like, how did this happen? They were organic for sure. And right now, I feel like if I needed to talk to somebody, the first person in my mind is a white woman. And I'm like, how did this happen? She doesn't even the one I'm thinking about in particular, she doesn't even know I'm recording this. I should send it to her. She doesn't even know what my channel is. I should send it to her. She's probably gonna laugh. Because if I send it to her, she's gonna know exactly that I'm talking about her. But it was interesting because over time, my level of comfort changed. I didn't care about her race. I didn't care about any of that. She's a person to me. This is just a whole full on person. This is a woman. Let me talk about this for a second. Not all skin folk are kinfolk. Now, let me tell you, this one is very, I'm very sensitive about this one, and I'm going to try to keep this not too heavy. My Black friendships had become very hard. They were so hard. I found that I wasn't interested in being around my Black friends. I didn't really want to joke with my Black friends. I didn't want anything. I really didn't want to be bothered because I found that many of the friends, I'm like, maybe it's maybe I'm picking the wrong people. Maybe the seasons have passed. But I just noticed that I constantly felt someone taking shots at me or there was some subversive activity happening behind the scenes or there's a lot of that going on. And I think it becomes really disappointing when you find that people who look like you are the ones who are not championing for you. Championing, can I get the words out? Championing? They're not a champion for you. I think there is a level of concern When you're like, have a good one. Sorry, I got to wish my kid, good day for school. It becomes difficult when you have a level of expectation for friendships and those expectations aren't met. But I have found that my Black friendships have become toxic. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. This does not mean Black women can't be friends. Because let me tell you something, Black friendships, when they're good, they're great. Yes, I still have my high school friend, by the way. Black friendships, when they're good, they're great. But when I thought about the people who I thought were friends of mine, I realized that maybe that ship has sailed. Maybe that season has passed. It was really interesting to watch the snarkiness and the nastiness, and I did not expect that at middle ages, and not necessarily just towards me, just towards others. I'm like, there's something going on in some of these people's lives that they have to be this way. The subversive activity, the nastiness. And I'm like, why is it so hard for these women to just be vulnerable and say, you know what, I'm hurting. Instead, they would hurt each other and hurt others. Some have hurt me. And it dawned on me, I'm like, are these friends? So oddly enough, while it's amazing how, rejection is God's protection, right? I think many of you guys have heard that before, but God will put people in your life, right on time. It was interesting because as I was pulling away from some of these toxic relationships, I didn't know I was feeding this other set of relationships. And it's just the way it happened. I didn't even want it to happen. You get invited to do things and turn things down. And like, and people are just like, all right, whatever, no big deal. Just kept, reaching out. Hey, what are you doing? I'm like, being my own blackity black self. Um, but yeah, it was interesting. Like I said, I don't want to make this too heavy, but I think about how not all skin folk are kinfolk. But I'm supposed to have Black female friends. We're supposed to be besties, right? I don't know. I like this weird dark in the back, fact I got on a black top, black pants, feeling some kind of way. I wish it was super, super dark. So it'd be kind of like weird, like I had the floating face in the hands. But anyway, yeah, I just felt like I'm supposed to have like this core group of Black women. I mean, we do have a common experience, right? And yet, some of the people that I identified with in recent times, not racially, didn't look like me. I didn't even want to give them a chance. And then when you give people an opportunity to show themselves who they are, you're like, wow. And you recognize a level of depth in people, you're like, this is pretty neat. You learn a lot. You learn a lot about yourself. It challenges your ethics. I always like to talk about morals and ethics in my kids. Morals are things that are taught, ethics are things that you experience, right? That challenges your morals. So I always felt like I was supposed to have like these Black friendships. And let me just say I do. I still have my friend from high school and dear to my heart. But these other relationships, I found that when I had mentally punted, I didn't miss them. I hadn't even thought about them. But yeah, anyway, so I'm sitting here like messed up because I'm like, I'm supposed to have like my crew, right? But yet I'm having a better experience, a better relationship with people who didn't look like me. Then now there are going to be some out there who are going to be like, you can't trust this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, you can't trust all people who look like you either. You can't. And let me take you to my third topic. I'm tired of the division. Look, we know our country is messed up, but I think there are good people anywhere, everywhere. I think for me, I don't want to live my life in a way that I am limiting my relationships. Not that I was doing that before, because I wasn't. But there are some people who are like, nope, you got to just be hardcore blackity black black. And I'm like, no, I don't. I know exactly who I am. But it's okay to have these relationships. I think a level of dissension is good at times too. It sharpens each other. You learn from each other. Do we have to be exactly the same? Do we have to echo every single thought the same? Does it make us just an echo chamber? I don't know. But what I am saying is I'm tired of that, right? Like, why do we have to be so divided? I don't like it. What I do know is here I am thinking about friendships. Now, this conversation I had this past weekend, this Friday, past Friday. By the way, it's Tuesday. Um, I had this with a black woman actually. She was super cool. And we were just talking about black friendships and how some of them were just so toxic. And I was just thinking about like hurt people hurt people. People want to take shots and do these things and say these things. And I'm like, no, this isn't okay. And I'm not okay with this brand of friendship. And here I am saying these things, and she's saying these things, and I was just sitting here cracking up because I'm like, I have a healthy set of friendships outside of my black relationships. I don't know. It just gave me food for thought. Now look, this was not meant to be a heavy video. I try not to make them too heavy. I try to like highlight certain things, right? Just to be, introspective and for others to gain some sort of perspective of where I'm coming from. But anyway, let me just say this. It is not lost on me that black and white women still have some difficulty in their friendships. Okay. There is a trust thing, all right, and it's deserved. Okay. I've seen some problematic behavior from white women. It is deserved when black women do not trust white women. And I want everyone to catch this. But what I will say is, I have to allow myself to deal with people how they present themselves to me. You go into your situations with your eyes wide open and you give it time and you let things happen organically. However, I've also learned that just because someone has my skin tone does not mean that they're going to be a good friend. I've seen some reckless behavior, things were said, things are done, not necessarily just towards me, some towards me, but I think black women also should be open to having relationships with all kinds of people. I think it's healthy. I'm not saying you have to be besties. But anyway, the title of this was Can Black and White Women Be Friends? My answer is yes. I'm not saying it's a cakewalk. It doesn't have to be difficult. I'm not saying you have to be besties, but you can be friends. And I say this, and I want you to understand it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be friends with a lot of black women because let me tell you something. In the last 10 or 15 years, I have seen some things. There are some women out here who are treacherous. Treacherous. I don't know. Anyway, it's a light conversation. It wasn't meant to be heavy. Hopefully, you enjoyed it. Maybe I'll have a panel on and we can discuss maybe much more a lengthy conversation. We can go into depth on the difficulties in black and white women being friends. Now we can deep dive on that because I do have some things to say about the mistrust, um, the privilege that's involved, There's some things that go with it, right? I'm not saying all relationships are like that, but there are some people out there who are wolves in sheep's clothing. Sometimes I want to be petty and name people, but I'm not going to be petty. But all right, that's it. Look, hopefully you enjoyed it. Um, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I would love to hear your comments on this. Send this to people. Hopefully you watch this entire video. All right, guys. Black Opinionated Woman out.